Well, I promised there would be Borg, and there are indeed Borg. So, going back now to some action figures. And you might have seen these very briefly before on this channel, but I've never had all 3 of the Borg Assimilation figures from Art Asylum. And you might remember that I had the Borg combat drone, the Borg drone from the combat series, also by Art Asylum recently. He was a great big chunky fella, and I'll come back to him. But this is classic Art Asylum packaging. Great big clear box, but lots of nice sort of artwork around the edges just to let you know that, you know, sort of to give you more context for it basically. And the first one of these I picked up, I had not realized they were virtually always found in a sequence of 3 because there were only 3 of them released. So buying one by itself was sheer stupidity on my part at the time because I didn't know any better. So I'm going to show you this full set of 3 that I now have in my possession, because I've only just picked these up through a sort of fortuitous combination of eBay giving me some money off and a very reasonable offer from a seller in the first place. So, you know, I thought, yeah, can't really say no to these, and these were in nice condition as well. So the first up here we've got is a nice Klingon assimilation specimen. And as you can see, you know, the detail on him, as is always the way with Art Asylum figures in particular, is really, really lovely. Classic best of both worlds kind of Borg costuming this really. These came out in 2002, so they were pretty much the first things, amongst the first things at least, that Art Asylum released when they got the license before Diamond Select took over. So this is pure Art Asylum we're looking at here. So as you can see, he's got this most enormous sort of attachment on his right arm. I'm assuming that he was going to end up as a sort of combat class drone, because why wouldn't you? He's a Klingon, you know, so he's got sort of some inherent characteristics there that the Borg would probably take use of, I would imagine. So if we turn him around on the back, you can see here that there is a... Art Asylum did this quite a lot. They like their badges, so even on their ships and so on, you often got these little badges that you could collect from the packaging, and that's got a it's actually, I'm trying to read the writing on it actually. It just says Borg Assimilation, resistance is futile, and that's the Borg crest there. So it doesn't really say much there about the actual individual figure. And unfortunately that's reflecting quite a lot. So let me just see what's reflecting. There we go, that's better. So this reads, the Borg are the absolute personification of evil in the galaxy. Their singular goal for biological and technological perfection compels them to assimilate all that stand in their way. They destroy without mercy, reason or conscience. Once assimilated, each alien species contributes their biological and technological distinctiveness to the collective and help bring order to chaos. Resistance is futile. 3 distinctive alien species, technically superior articulations: Klingon Borg, Hirogen Borg, and Cardassian Borg. You will be assimilated. And then there are various people credited over here on the right hand side as the Asylum inmates, various. So, you know, it's a classic piece of Asylum artwork and everything else there. So it's really, really eye-catching artwork on all of their box artwork. And it's one thing that I miss with the Diamond Select versions when they came out of their ships and so on, that they kind of dropped that. We lost that sort of artistry, I think it's fair to say. So you can see there's quite a distinct cut-off point between Art Asylum and Diamond Select, where Diamond Select just went kind of bland for the packaging, really. I'm not saying it was ugly packaging, it was still they still had really good windows. You could always really see what you were about to buy, which I liked. And that's in stark contrast to, say, Playmate's approach, which was always solid cardboard, which is great for durability and everything else. I get that, but you know, it's a bit of a shame in a sense. So that is one of 3, the Klingon. I can't remember if I've had him before, actually. That was the other problem. I always forgot which one I needed whenever I saw them. You don't tend to see them very often, and certainly not by themselves. So quite how I managed to get just one the first time round, I don't know. So number 2 is a Hirogen gentleman. Now, you might not be familiar with who the Hirogen are, and you could be forgiven because you'd have to be quite into your trek to know them. And essentially, I can't give you the official backstory, I suppose, but they were, as I recall, a nomadic race in the Delta Quadrant. I always get this wrong. Delta Quadrant, where Voyager was stranded. So Voyager encounters them, and they are a race of hunters. So they don't hunt for food; they're hunting for sport, like the Predator. They tend to hunt in packs. There's often the hunting group. They often work in pairs in a single ship, if that's what they're doing. And we see them mixing it up with species 8472, which was optimistic of them. But we also see that they sort of hunt Voyager, kind of. It's a slightly more complicated relationship because they know that Voyager is kind of on a par with them. But they get very interested with the holodeck technology that Voyager possesses, because they realize that they can then do hunts basically without having to move around so much. So it's quite an interesting one because Voyager kind of pollutes them in that sense. So this chap, it was quite impressive prosthetics on them, but they in and of themselves were quite an armored race. They wore a lot of armor. They had a lot of symbolism going on. They sort of painted their armor before they started the hunt, and they took it very, very seriously. Actually, I think they captured Tuvok and 7 of 9 at one point, and for whatever reason didn't immediately finish them. But you can see this guy's got a sort of prosthetic over one eye, I think, and sort of enclosing his face. And again, he's got a great big, huge sort of prosthetic on his right arm, whereas his left is left largely alone. So yeah, I mean, again, the sort of the amount of detail in there is superb. Very, very similar box to the Klingon, of course, but they're part of the same series. You'd expect that. So that's designation 2 of 3. It's kind of a shame they didn't do a little sort of mini bio on how they came to be assimilated and so on, but it is what it is. I'm not going to blame them for that. It's I think they were concentrating more on the aesthetics and on the backstory, so that's fair enough. And all the text on the back is exactly as it was on the previous version. So just general sort of warnings of assimilation there. So finally, there might be this guy I've not had before actually. Could be the Cardassian. Now you might be saying, well, hang on a minute. How come they've assimilated a Cardassian? Because it is, I think, highly unlikely that the Borg in the Alpha Quadrant ever got round to assimilating any Cardassians, but I can't rule out that they got the odd ship here and there to have a look at their tech. It's an interesting thing about the Borg because in theory they should only attack vessels that are more advanced than they are, really, in order to get a better tech, whereas otherwise presumably they just ignore you and leave you alone. Now, one thing I immediately noticed about this guy is that he's got quite a lot of detail, but it's also on his left arm, not his right on this one. So they switched it up a little bit for the Cardassian. So they've given him his prosthetic on the left, not the right. But again, he's got an eye prosthetic as well, and sort of various tubes and so on coming off him. And again, really nice sort of body armor on him, as you'd expect with the Borg prosthetics there. So again, really nice sculpt on him. I'd be intrigued to know how many people actually got these out of their packets originally, because you see a remarkable number of these still in their original packaging even now, as a trio. They are frequently sold as a trio and not separately, as I've probably already mentioned. But there you go. So that's what you're looking for. That's the Cardassian. And as I say, he's slightly different because his main prosthetic is on the other arm. Now, do you remember a few moments ago, and there's his badge there, a few moments ago I mentioned that when I first picked these up, I made the schoolboy error of picking up just one. So, I'm going to do something sacrilegious. It's not that sacrilegious, however, because as you can see, this is the one I first picked up, and it's horribly yellowed. He clearly got left in a window somewhere, and he got horribly yellow over time. So, you know, some clear plastics will do this. He might not even have been exposed to sunlight. It might just be that he has that particular type of plastic has just aged. But obviously, the other ones I've just shown you are absolutely fine. And there, if you look at them alongside each other, I would say that even his cardboard is slightly lighter than that cardboard. So I think he's been properly bleached. In fact, interestingly, he's got white. He's actually got the text there is in white, whereas it's green on the right hand side there. So I don't know if that is just a sun bleach thing or if he was a slightly later edition for some reason, but his dating is the same. So anyway, I'm going to open him because I've said to myself, right, this one is basically, it's not in great condition. You know, he's clearly had his day in terms of yellowing, and I don't think I have ever really seen, and certainly not played with, any of these outside of their packaging. So I don't actually know how good they are in terms of articulation and everything else. So I'm going to commit heresy, and I'm going to actually unbox this Borg, which I know is shocking to all concerned, but I figure that if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it with one who is, you know, already sort of on his way out, effectively. But I'm hoping that the figure itself isn't sort of particularly bad inside, so I can just sort of extract him, and you know he'll be sort of all right to actually look at least. I'm being very haphazard about this because it's relatively late. I may or may not have been at the wrong nail. So let's just see what it takes to extract him. Quite a lot. I mean, he's still well stuck on the card, and that's the backing completely dead. It's a bit of a shame, but I can't really do any better than that because he's remarkably well stuck on. So you can see there the back packaging has got a nice Borg regeneration alcove on it as an illustration there. So I like that. That's very, very cool. And that is exactly what I would expect from Art Asylum. And it's not dissimilar to what they did with the combat drone example, where they gave him a really elaborate packaging, you know, that he could then sort of sit in. So I'm not feeling guilty about that because, like I say, you know, he wouldn't have been a particularly nice example to have. I'm slightly annoyed with myself for having wrecked. I didn't realise there was quite so much detail sat behind him, I must admit. But it was very well stuck on. That would have been quite tricky to extract him without doing damage. Now then, we've got classic little ties here, which I'm going to have to unravel. So I'd be interested to hear in the comments if anyone actually had these and had them sort of out as actual toys, because you know, I've only ever seen them in their boxed examples. I've never come across them loose in the wild. I think I've seen once or twice on eBay examples that are loose, but you know, that's about it. I mean, the great advantage of doing this for you as well, I think, is going to be that I'm just looking at it now from above, and it's got a huge amount of detail on the back as well, which you wouldn't otherwise see, of course. This is kind of why I wanted to do this, because I thought, now that I have the full set, given that I was daft enough to get individual spares, it does give me the opportunity to at least have a look at them in anger and just sort of, you know, get an appreciation for what they would have looked like if you actually had them out and played with the blinking things. So it's a nice sort of, it's got a sort of clamshell going on. Oh, and it's got a, there's a bit of a behind the scenes and new product updates slip in there with it as well. So that's also interesting to know. Let's have a look at this. Let me just have a quick look at this. Interesting. It's got a little hologram there. I don't know what that's to signify in particular. Perhaps it's just to indicate that it's sealed. I don't know. But it doesn't look like any sort of chip tech that I'm particularly familiar with. Sorry if you're impatient to actually have a look at the figure, but I do like to have a look at these old catalogues and things because it's a little bit of toy archaeology, you know. So let's see what we've got in here. So this is okay. Advertising Tony Hawk figures, which I wasn't anticipating. Okay, so let's just get down to your level here so I can have a look at this properly. So you've got the broken bow 7-inch action figures there from Star Trek Enterprise. So you've got Archer, T'Pol, Reed, Mayweather, Clang the Klingon, and Slick the Suliban. And there's also a deluxe version apparently, which includes NX-01 bridge bases. And then we've got away team 7-inch action figures again from Enterprise, because I think Enterprise was probably quite current at the time when Asylum had the license. So actually when they were bringing out the Enterprise ships, that was brand new at that point, of course, because yeah, that's about right, because I was recently looking at the Sovereign class Insurrection, and of course the Insurrection came out in '99, so I don't think we'd actually seen Enterprise yet. So we were getting very, very close to the Enterprise era as the last TV, well at that point in time obviously the last Star Trek TV series. And there it's also advertising Nemesis action figures, so this was around Nemesis time, obviously post-Insurrection, and the 7-inch action figures for Star Trek Borg Assimilation, which is this chap. Again, tries back to where it all began. Yes, indeed. And obviously no mention of Diamond Select yet. And then on the other side, we've got completely unrelated advertising. So we've got Mini Mates, who are Art Asylum as well. We've got, Dark Angel, wow. Oh yeah, I can't remember if I've seen that action figure or not. Do you remember Dark Angel? It's a very, very early Jessica Alba vehicle. I remember it quite distinctly. I actually quite like the storyline, as I recall. Look for the game coming soon for Sony PlayStation 2 and Microsoft Xbox. We've also got Kiss being advertised there, and Iron Maiden, Live After Death, Asylum Ultimate Series, and then various internet-related link-ups there. And apparently Tony Hawk 5-inch action figures, Vert series, 12-inch figures with accessories, and 3-inch mini-mates. So that was the Art Asylum catalogue that was Dark Angel. That's really interesting. I haven't thought about Dark Angel for years. So let's have a look at him. So this was the Hirogen, who, as I say, you may not be massively familiar with if you didn't catch all of Voyager. And as is often the way, he's going to be difficult to extract. Come on, Borg, I want to assimilate you, so could you be slightly more cooperative than you are being, please? I've got one more tie I need to tackle, apparently. Then I might be able to extract him. Was it just one? Or was it more than one? I think it must be more than one. Hang on, bear with me. Well, they certainly didn't want these being extracted from the packaging early if they could avoid it, clearly. They really didn't. There we go. I have unassimilated you, sir. Right. Just get rid of your spare restraining wires now, if I can. Might be the first test of his articulation, see if I can actually move him enough to get all his restraining wires out. It's a bit crazy. Oh, right. Okay, hopefully I haven't smashed anything in the process. Okay, so let's have a look at how he articulates out of the box. He feels quite stiff, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, assuming you can loosen them up, of course. So we have a little bit of knee jointage going on. So he's got quite a good sort of flex there at the back. A bit of tubing there, looks like it's already broken off. That might have been me getting him out of the box, of course, but actually to bend, that would have to flex. So maybe that was intentionally not attached too hard and is designed to float. That is a challenge. If you're going to do the Borg that way, that is a challenge, because if you don't do it like that, how else are you going to allow for it to move? But it definitely reattaches fairly happily, so that's good. Now in terms of his, yeah, so you can definitely you can do quite a decent high kick there. So he's got about 90 degrees of lift there, which is good. Yeah, okay. So you can't really get his legs backwards though. So that's a little bit more limiting. I don't think you really know, because he's got butt armor. So as I said, he's got a lot of stuff going on in the back of him as well. He's very, very well done on all angles. You know, they haven't skimped anywhere, but that does mean that you sacrifice his articulation because of the amount of stuff that he's got going on in his back there. But it's nice to see that. And he's got sort of spinal armor there and everything. So that's very cool. I'll just lift him up past the camera, because that will give you sort of a full idea of the extent to which he is in fact detailed. And I'm hoping that when you look at that on a big screen, that's going to look pretty awesome, because it is pretty awesome. There is a lot of detail going on there. I love the attention to detail from Art Asylum. It's a great sculpt, given that he's over 20 years old now as well. So he's got shoulder swivel, definitely shoulder swivel going on there. He's stiffer on the, ironically, his freer hand is stiffer. So he's got wrist rotation there. So he's got quite a few points of articulation. I don't know if anyone's counting. That's sort of 1, 2, 3. Although he's very stiff because of his shoulder guard, I think. But he's definitely got a little bit of movement there going on. Less so on this side, of course. Although actually, no, he has got an elbow joint, even though he's got his prosthesis on there. So he has got an elbow joint as well. His head does move a little bit, but again, he's got this sort of tube coming off the back of his head, so you've got to be a little bit careful with that as well. So he hasn't got a huge amount of movement there, but I think those pipes and so on will probably just reattach. So because they've already got built-in stuff, he's kind of already got accessories, sort of built into him effectively. So he doesn't really come with any other weapons or anything like that, because he doesn't need to, because he's got them all sort of inbuilt. But nonetheless, that's a nice menacing sculpt for a Borg drone, I feel. That's a great display piece. That's a great display piece. Let me just sort of scan down. So yeah, he's cool. He's very, very cool. And I think he would quite happily go up against modern day figures. 7 inches, I don't know, is it a slightly odd scale these days? I don't know. It's not it's a good scale. I mean, it's good from a size detail point of view. Now, I said I was going to bring a friend into play here. And this is him with that combat drone that I was mentioning. So this is the Art Asylum combat Borg drone from that other series that had a grand total of 1 Borg drone and a Klingon warrior in it. And as you can see, he's only fractionally smaller. So if you were to say that this guy was from a bigger humanoid race to start with, and he's just sort of, slightly more heavily armoured, perhaps he's more of a combat drone almost, he's an augmented combat drone or something, they're not actually ridiculously out of scale with one another. they're there and thereabouts, you know. I've got him leaning over a little bit, so actually neither of them look out of place with one another because they've got the same sort of design aesthetic as each other as well. So they actually work pretty well together, I think. You know, they would sit well on the shelf together. So he could even stand behind the other three. So he could be a sort of like a, you know, almost like a sort of a leader or a artillery support type drone if you wanted him to be. So that's nice. It's nice that they work together there. I'll even get this little badge out to show you as well, just for the sake of completeness. But I don't think it's, as I say, I think it was just a little sort of gimmicky thing, I suppose, to say that you could now that's interesting. Okay. I was saying that there is actually something on the flip side of it, which again I wouldn't have seen had I not unboxed it even. So there's that. That says Art Asylum Seal of Insanity. Nice. 2002. Oh, that's nice. Okay, cool. So that's probably nice to see, because unless you got that out of the box, you wouldn't know what the flip side said. Art Asylum Official Seal of Insanity. Yeah, 2002. Crazy Kids. Something I think as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's clever of them. So yeah, I mean, so obviously I'm not going to get my other nice versions out of the package. Ironically, I do have one other. So in theory, at some point in time, I could have two loose ones, but I think his box is better. So I'm not quite sure whether or not I might move him on to try and recoup a bit of cost, and do it, you know, and sort of do it that way. Oh, that's hilarious! I just inadvertently dropped that on the floor, and now it's completely loose of its packaging. So now I've got it free and clear to show you. That was fortuitous. So there you go. So that's the little badge there, and then the flip side there. So that's quite cool. So yeah, I mean, as I say, you know, I do think they're really, really well sculpted figures. They are very, very Borg, as the Borg were in Best of Both Worlds. Lots of tubes, lots of pipes, lots of armor. You know, really, really good looking action figures. Yeah, the one downside to them, I suppose, if there is a downside, is that they are so heavily armored that their articulation does suffer a bit and they struggle a bit. I didn't actually check for ankle movement, but again, ankle movement is something that, yeah, there's a little tiny bit. There's a little tiny bit. His feet do actually move, in fairness. So there is a little bit of movement in his feet. So there are quite a few points of articulation. It's just that they are a little bit limited because of the amount of armour that's on him. But nonetheless, I think those are both really, really impressive figures. So it's nice to have them both out, and obviously now I could display both of those quite happily, and maybe another one if I choose to free it up. But yeah, really happy with those. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. I shall leave it there for now and crack on with some more. Cheers for now.